So the first four scientific presentations are going to be moderated by Dr. Polyphil and Dr. Unat Gabrahalla. Dr. Polyphil is an obstetrician and gynecologist and a family planning fellow at St. Paul's Hospital Medical College. He has been involved in several studies on family planning and abortion care services, including supervision of postgraduate studies on SRH. He participated in developments and revision of Rwanda family planning guideline, as well as the OBGYN clinical guidelines. He is a lecturer of obstetrics and gynecology at the University of Rwanda. He is an adjunct faculty in the Global Women's Health Fellowship at the University of Utah, USA, to strengthen his passion and career in SRH services. Dr. Polyphil is also pursuing an MSc in SRH policy and programming at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine. Please allow me to welcome Dr. Polyphil to the stage to moderate the sessions. The other moderator is Dr. Unat Gabrahalla. Dr. Unat is an assistant professor of public health and reproductive health at the School of Public Health at St. Paul's Hospital Medical College. Her research area is reproductive health with a focus on family planning. Dr. Unat and her team has recently finalized the development of a contraceptive contraceptive counseling pocket book for service providers in collaboration with Ministry of Health. The pocket book will go into use in public health facilities in the coming few months. She has published several papers in peer-reviewed journals. Please welcome Dr. Unat Gabrahalla. So the stage is yours.
Our first presenter is Mr. Kalayu Mrutz. Mr. Kalayu is a PhD candidate in public health at Putin University. He graduated from Mekelle University with a bachelor's degree in public health in 2007 and from Addis Ababa University with a master of public health in reproductive and family health in 2014. Kalayu's professional career started in 2008 at the health center, where he was the head of the health center and clinical officer, treating outpatients and inpatients. Later, he joined Debre Berhan University and worked as a lecturer and assistant professor, offering courses, conducting research, and providing community services for 10 years. Kalayu has published more than 20 peer-reviewed research papers. Of them, 10 of them, he was the primary author. Today, he's going to share with us a national longitudinal study that he conducted and he entitled Achieving Reductions in Unmet Need for Contraception with Postpartum Family Planning Counseling in Ethiopia that he did from 2019 to 2020. You're welcome, Kalayu.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kalayu from Curtin University, Western Australia. I will present my topic on family planning counseling and unmet need for family planning in Ethiopia, which is from a national longitudinal study. The unmet need for contraception is associated with unintended pregnancy and adverse maternal and child outcomes. Conceptually, the term unmet need is defined as not wanting to become pregnant, but not using contraception while interested in using the contraceptive methods. Although seems this term is simple in defining, but it's practically estimating the unmet need for contraception is not as simple as defining the term. So since the start of the demographic and the health survey in low and middle income countries, the HS or the standard approach method was using, it has been used to estimate the unmet need, especially in the DHS. There are around 15 questions which help us to estimate estimate the unmet need. But as this approach estimated the unmet need that on the intendedness of the last verse, it doesn't reflect the risk of or the current risk of intended pregnancy. Because this currently scholars suggested for estimating unmet need, especially for women during the postpartum period. The current status approach and prospective approach are recommended. The current status approach is important for women during the postpartum women period. So based on the current status approach, this approach assumes women having an unmet need for contraception if they resume the sexual intercourse and menstrual cycles, especially after the recent birth. If they don't want their next pregnancy within 24 months of the recent birth, but they are not using contraceptive, any contraceptive methods. If they fulfill these conditions, the current status approach classify women as having unmet need. Globally, the unmet need for contraception has declined in the past decades, but still around 257 million women have unmet need for modern contraception globally. Out of these, 3/4 of this figure are contributed all from low and middle income countries. So current evidence in this low and middle income countries indicates that fear of side effect of the contraceptive method and infrequent sex are the commonest reasons for not using contraceptive methods. Similarly, in Ethiopia, also researchers indicate that fear of side effect and the health concern and poor or low perceptions of risk of the pregnancy are among the commonest reasons for not using contraceptive methods in Ethiopia. So nevertheless, these reasons could be they are easily preventable or they can be prevented by providing family planning counseling during the contact with the healthcare providers or during visiting of the women in the health facilities. So evidence indicates that postpartum family planning counseling is associated with reducing the unmet need for contraception. Especially one study in Nepal indicated that family planning counseling provided at the antenatal, during delivery, as well as during the postpartum period, was associated with reducing the unmet need for contraception among women in the postpartum period. However, this evidence is lacking in Ethiopia on the impact of family planning counseling during the maternal and the child health services on the unmet need for contraception. So the aim of this study is to determine the unmet need for contraception among women in the postpartum period, and second one is to examine the relationship between the family planning counseling provided in the different NCS services and the unmet need for contraception. So for assessing these aims, we use a community-based community-based prospective cohort study, data from a nationally representative survey conducted by the Performance Monitor for Action Ethiopia between 2019 and 2020. So this PM Ethiopia panel survey was conducted in 6 regions of regional states of Ethiopia. Tigray, Afar, Amara, Oromia, SNN, PR, and Adisa were part of these 6 regions. So for this study purpose, we limited our analysis for those who received the 3 maternal and child health services: antenatal care, facility delivery, and the child immunization services. So around 769 women were included in our analysis. Outcome of this, especially the primary outcome of this study, was the unmet need for contraception among women in the postpartum period, which was estimated using the current status definition. And the primary exposure of the variable of this study was family planning counseling provided during the different MCH services during antenatal prior to discharge from a facility and child immunization service. So during our analysis, we adjusted for socio-demographic and childbearing characteristics as well as health service utilization variables. And we use a weighted modified Poisson regression model to estimate the adjusted relative risk of unmet need for contraception. This is a flow diagram for classifying women as having unmet need and not having unmet need. Basically, we use sexual intercourse in the past 3 months before the survey, and the child intention of with intent for months of the recent births for classifying at risk and not at risk for unintended pregnancy. And so we classify at risk and not at risk. And those women who have at risk of unintended pregnancy or unknown risks, if they have no their sexual intercourse in the past 3 months is not known, and there are no indication on these informations, we classify it as at risk of unintended or unknown risk of for unintended pregnancy. But we further assessed using the postpartum amenorrheic contraception use and lactational amenorrhea de facto criteria. So this is overall the flow diagram for classifying unmet need using the current status definition. The result for this study, I have focused on the findings of the exposure and the outcome variables because the background variables are similar with the other studies in Ethiopia. So I focus basically on this. So family planning counseling, around 22% of the participants were received family planning counseling during antenatal care, and 28% of them are also received counseling during prior to discharge or from the facility. And similarly, 28% of the women also received family planning counseling during child immunization. Approximately around 34% or 1/3 of the participants of the women had unmet need for contraception. So this table also on the right side is regarding the relationship between the family planning counseling and the unmet need for contraception. This table indicates that around the counseling during child immunization were associated with reducing unmet need for contraception, and counseling during prior to discharge from a facility was also associated with reducing the unmet need, but the effect estimate was not precise, as you see in the confidence interval include this one. Similarly, the antenatal counseling during antenatal care also unprecise as it includes one, but the counseling during antenatal care was unlike the counseling during prior to discharge and the child immunization. It was not associated with reducing. Instead, it is associated with increasing unmet need. So in summary from this study, a significant number of women will have missed the opportunity of family planning counseling despite Ethiopian government suggests integrated family planning counseling during the different health service provision, particularly during the maternal and the child health services. And our study also found there is a high unmet need for contraceptions compared to the national plans. And the strongest evidence was found for moderate association between reductions in the unmet need for contraception and family planning counseling during the child immunization service. However, family planning counseling during antenatal care did not associate with reducing the unmet need for contraception. Instead, it was even though the effect estimate was not precise, it was associated with increasing the unmet need. So, what is the message from this study? Maybe we suggest some recommendation or suggestions for healthcare providers, program managers, and for researchers. So there is a need to promote and strengthen the integration of family planning counseling with MCH services. Even though I know, I understand when there is a guideline in the family planning as well as in antenatal care, but it needs further promoting and strengthening of these integrations of family planning. As we see from our finding, is small proportion of women are only obtain family planning counseling when they are visiting the health facility. And healthcare providers are also should follow the national family planning guidelines as it is recommended integration of family planning counseling. So healthcare providers, they should adhere to the national family planning guidelines. But healthcare managers, program managers, starting the ministry out downward to the district level, regional health bureau managers, they should have a strong monitoring and evaluation system to strengthen the family planning counseling and the services. And we further also suggest a research should be conducted to especially to explore the reason for low coverage of family planning counseling and to investigate why the counseling during antenatal is not associated with reducing the unmet need for contraceptions. Even though WHO as well as the ministry documents suggest counseling during antenatal is for improving utilization as well as reducing the unmet need, but we have seen that this is not the reality. So further study is important to investigate the reasons for these two important issues. So this is all about what I have. So if you have any questions, suggestions, and recommendations, it's welcome. So thank you very much.
Them down and he's an assistant professor at Dilla University. He has more than 10 years of experience in teaching. He holds a Master of Public Health in Health Education and Promotion, and currently he is doing his PhD study in Health Education and Communication at Jimma University. Today, Johannes is sharing with us his study conducted and he entitled Effectiveness of Peer-Led Education Interventions on Contraceptive Use, Unmet Need and Demand Among School Adolescents in Judeo Zone, South Ethiopia. And this was a class randomized controlled trial. You're welcome, Mr. Johannes.
My topic is effectiveness of peer-led education intervention on contraceptive use, unmet needs and the demand among adolescent girls in Gedio Zone, South Ethiopia, a cluster randomized controlled trial. Background, adolescent is the phase of life between the age 10 to 90. A significant number of people around the world are sexually active, significant number of adolescents. However, those adolescents are being exposed to several reproductive health challenges and consequences due to limited access to and poor utilization of contraceptive service. In developing countries, adolescent girls actively engage in unprotected sexual intercourse, and 1/3 do not use modern contraceptive. Those adolescents may experience unmet needs and the demand for contraceptive because of their unique fertility preference, availability and access to service, and behavioral and social-cultural factors. Moreover, the information available to adolescents may be given in manner that is authoritarian, judgmental, or not adapt to adolescents' value or viewpoints. Adolescents are frequently too embarrassed to talk about sexual issues with their sexual partner, which makes them unable to articulate their reproductive desire. Thus, facility-based or provider-based sexual education and promotion of contraceptive use would not be sufficient to increase contraceptive use by its own. This call for any to deploy effective strategy that could engage and empower adolescent girls for open discussion regarding safe sexual behavior in general and contraceptive use in particular, given that most adolescent girls are nowadays in schools where they often spend the significant number of their time with peers. A school-based education approach to promote contraceptive use would be a potential strategy. In line with this, the Sustainable Development Goal Agenda acknowledges the importance of reproductive health education at school. Moreover, their contraceptive use may be influenced by peers, implying the importance of addressing friends or peers to create a supportive social environment for contraceptive use. Method and material, the study setting. The study was conducted in Gedio Zone, Southern Ethiopia, 662 kilometers from Addis Ababa, the capital of Ethiopia. The present study covers 6 secondary schools. The study conducted for 6 months. Trial design is a single blind school-based parallel cluster randomized controlled trial with a 1-to-1 allocation ratio was conducted. The study participants for this intervention were 222 sexually active secondary school adolescents. Inclusion and exclusion criteria, government secondary schools, teachers, selected peer educators, and randomly chosen sexually active students were included. For peer educators and the teacher selection process in each section or class, 4 outstanding, responsible, and communicative students were selected as peer educator in the intervention school. In addition, 2 biology or chemistry teachers per schools were selected. The training of peer educators receive a standard training program. Peer educators and the teachers attend the training session. The training stays for about 10 days. Intervention procedure, peer educator disseminates about contraceptive utilization and in general about reproductive health, about modern contraceptive. Furthermore, we prepare booklets, flip charts, and poster that aid the peer education process. The students should attend at least 80% of the session as a compliance criteria. The intervention organization contents delivery were standard as much as possible across the experimental school. The intervention fidelity, the investigator developed a criteria to assess intervention fidelity based on standards for peer education program guidelines. The primary outcome, there are 3 primary outcomes: contraceptive use, unmet needs, and contraceptive demand. Sample size determination, the sample size is determined using G-power statistical software using 2 population proportion. 57% is used from Ethiopian Demographic Health Survey from school. Then we assume 10% increase after intervention. The contraceptive demand increased by 10%. Therefore, 67 is expected increase after intervention. And the final sample size is 1,698 eligible adolescents were participated. However, in both arms, only 222 participants who were currently sexually active were included in the analysis. Randomization, after the first phase of baseline data collection, schools were stratified into individual assignment of intervention and a control group. Accordingly, from 9 secondary schools or clusters, 6 schools were randomly selected, resulting in 3 intervention and 3 control groups. Simple randomization with 1-to-1 allocation ratio was done. The person for randomization then notifies the study that belong to either the intervention or the control groups. Data process and analysis, data were entered into EP Info version 7.2 software and export to SPSS version 23 for analysis. The group difference was investigated using chi-square test for categorical variables. Finally, the intervention and the control group pre and post intervention difference in difference was measured. The generalized estimate equation with binary logic function was used to compare the difference outcome in change between the intervention and the control group. The results, the study enrolled 280 eligible participants. 6 participants were excluded from the study, 5 from intervention arm, 1 from control arm because of different reasons. This is the baseline characteristics of the study participants. Difference between baseline and end-line contraceptive related characteristics based on per protocol analysis. The proportion of participants using contraceptive increased by 26% in the intervention group. The difference in contraceptive use between intervention and the control group was 25%, and for unmet needs, it's 7.4%, and for the difference for contraceptive demand was 17.7%, which is significant this is the table that show the significance level, which incorporates both the Pearson, chi-square, and the Fisher exact test, and the difference within the group and the difference between the group is shown for the major variables. The generalized estimate education intervention results of secondary school students after controlling the potential compounding, the GE multivariate model, we measure using odds ratio. The contraceptive use is 9 times more likely to occur among the intervention, and for unmet need and the demand, it's about 6 times. This is a GE result. We see the time with the interaction with the group, and we see the effect of the intervention after 6 months. Discussion. There is a growing demand for sexual and reproductive health program for adolescents in developing countries. However, there is no sufficient evidence on whether peer-led education can effectively promote demand for and use of contraceptive, especially in resource-limited settings. Therefore, rigorous contextual evaluation are needed to assess whether this behavior is changing or not. Different systematic review findings show that school-based peer education increased contraceptive use, leading to decrease in unwanted pregnancy, similar to our study. Applying peer education in out-of-school community is also statistically significant, associated with better knowledge and the use of modern contraceptive. Without a peer education program, contraceptive use in the intervention community would not have significantly lower, as a study from Western Africa, Cameroon, rural Indonesia, and Spain reports. However, studies from South Africa and India suggest that governments who advocate widespread use of peer education as an approach to improve SR rate of adolescents, including contraceptive use, need to recognize barrier to implementation and ensure ongoing monitoring and evaluation of effectiveness and cost effectiveness. This implies that testing intervention in a specific context is very crucial before implementing large-scale peer education intervention on contraceptive utilization that may demand high resources. A school-based peer education intervention positively affects knowledge, normative beliefs, and attitude of adolescents, as the study from India and Zimbabwe reports. Moreover, many quasi-experimental studies that include both male and female adolescents from West Africa, Southwest Nigeria, and Cameroon showed there is a positive effect after peer education intervention in willingness to buy contraceptive, knowledge of contraceptive, and attitude to contraceptive and self-efficacy. This shows that peer educator has a positive effect for both male and female adolescents. On the other hand, other studies indicate that intervention alone may not increase contraceptive use among adolescents. Instead, intervention focusing on reproductive health service, including comprehensive post-abortion family planning service, and financial incentives bring positive change in contraceptive utilization and demand. Limitation of the study, all outcomes reported in this review are based on self-reports, which creates the potential for social desirability and recall bias. The study used smaller sample size because it did not include more cluster due to limited number of public secondary schools in the setting. The study excludes early age adolescents. And furthermore, our study is not include male adolescents. Conclusion, a school-based peer education intervention is effective in low resource setting, in improving contraceptive use, unmet need, and creating demand among sexually active adolescents. This suggests that the potential utility of the approach in similar setting for promotion of contraceptive use and demand. Thank you very much.
Johannes, you can join us while we are collecting questions. We are welcoming questions from the audience. We have both virtual and physical audience. Anyone can send us, from the physical audience, you can microphone a question from our two presenters, and those who are online, you can ask your question, or you can put it in the Q&A discussion forum on the online platform.
Question is for Johannes. So how was the sexually active students were selected? This is a secondary, a high school, and I don't think many people will be willing to talk about that. And how was they selected?
My question goes to the first presenter. The first presenter included his study participants who visited those who took three visits, three family planning visits. So what's the point, or why does he take the three visits only? What's the cutoff point, or is there any standard that he chose client visiting three visits were included in his study? And the second question also goes to the first presenter. Family planning counseling is a broad concept. And it needs to be operationally defined, but in the methodology section, I didn't see any operational definition regarding to family planning counseling. So how did he measure it, the concept of family planning counseling?
I see one more question over there.
Thank you, Johannes. My question is, one of your primary outcome is contraceptive use. And you told us that you provide a health education intervention and you finally measure 3 outcomes, contraceptive use, unmet need, and the third one is, I don't remember, sorry. So do you think health education only will increase contraceptive use, because there are different factors? For example, if your health education will convince the adolescents or youth to use the service, there are factors like system level factors, the friendly service at health center level or above, gaps related to the community of family planning. And like, or you can tell us if there are challenges reported by the study participants regarding the utilization of contraceptive. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One more question, maybe 2 more, and we hope the 2 will ask the question from the rest. Professor Delayu.
Okay, thank you. My question is for Johannes. Thank you for the nice presentation and selecting a good design for the study. So my first question is, are the schools at different, how are they located? Because in such kind of studies, the main challenge would be contamination of the intervention. Yeah, like for example, if they're from the same community, those periodic educators may got access to both intervention or and control group students, and informally they may contaminate. That's first question. The second one is your sample size calculation is 1,600, but actually the available study participants are 224 or something like that. So how confidently can you make your conclusion, or have you done retrospectively a power calculation to say your conclusion is a valid one? Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. My question is also for Johannes. I have one question, which is a quick one about validity on your design. So one of the pitfall of the cluster randomized control trial is the issue of validity. So this kind of design are statistically inefficient than those of other experimental study designs, where the unit of analysis is individuals. So here is the unit of analysis is group, and validity is also mostly an issue in this kind of study, though these kind of studies are administratively efficient. So how is your validity and how good to compare this kind of study finding with other study findings with unit of analysis is individual? Because I've seen discussion that you have compared your study finding with those from quasi-experimental study design and so on. And also I would be happy if you magnify your Poisson on your result part. So this is my issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's welcome our presenters to answer to this first row of questions. The good thing, we still have discussions during lunchtime and over the extended other time. Johannes, you can start.
Okay, thank you for your nice question and the comment. The first question, how do you select sexually active students? Actually, this is the main challenge of the study, because this issue is very sensitive and the problem is deeply rooted in the community. Therefore, it is a big challenge, but I try to pass this challenge by making self-administered questionnaire for all, actually, I use a representative population. I don't know who is sexually active and who are not sexually active. I just deliver my self-administered questionnaire for the student based on the scientifically inter-random sampling techniques at a baseline level. This is the end line in the intervention phase. Therefore, we identify those students ever sexually active, at the same time currently sexually active. Therefore, the intervention should be given for currently sexually active because they are the one who needs this service. During that time, we give per the analysis, as I said, it is per protocol. We identify with the given code, and we give when we give peer education, we deliver for all students, regardless of their exposure for previous or current sexual practice, because it is very sensitive issue from our culture and other aspect. It is very sensitive. Therefore, I try to address the issue in this manner. That's why I am collecting very huge data. I collect 1,690 data, but I use only 224, which is currently sexually active. And among that, 424 are ever sexually active. This is the way that I pass in order to alleviate the problem and show the effect of the intervention. Having said this, for the second question is your primary outcome is contraceptive use. And do you think that health education can bring behavioral change on this regard? It says, the topic says effectiveness. This is the trial, whether it brings a change or not, especially in a country just like ours, in resource limited country. We don't have these issues are ጠዋትም ሲነሱ ነበር እነዚህ ኢሹዎች በጣም የአዶለሰንት በጥያቄ በዚህም በዲስከሽኑ ላይ ሲነሳ ነበር እና በጣም እኔ ራሴ ኦብዘርቭ ያደረኩት ነገር እና we have to address using a cheap method. The most important thing is here peer education is very cheap if we effectively utilize it. And this study try to show in this manner. If you are thinking about other giving service or intense incentive and other, which is beyond our capacity. Therefore, we have to test and utilize such practice as much as possible. And my discussion also shows that it is effective in different countries across the globe. Therefore, this is the way that I react. For Professor question, how do you select these schools? How do you manage the contamination issue? As much as possible, we classify the zone into the buffer, and different districts are there, and we apply our intervention on senior secondary schools. Senior secondary schools are very few compared to general secondary schools that give education from grade 9 to 12. Therefore, they are very dispersively there. Therefore, I use these methods, and the chance of data contamination is very low. The other is also on sample size issue. I think I addressed in the previous question. How do you achieve this using retrospective study, validity of the study? I recommend for future that such kinds of design might be important, and I accept your concept. The last question is about validity of your design in relation to the study. RCT, I use cluster, not simple randomized control. RCT, cluster randomized control trial. RCT and CRCT is somewhat different. These are clusters and group. Changing behavior at individual level is somewhat difficult. Therefore, applying cluster level using peer education is appropriate. And the different studies across the globe show it is effective if you apply using the fidelity of the intervention, or the fidelity the intervention required. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's welcome Kalayu for the two questions addressed to him. Kalayu, why and how did you choose 3 visits, and why? What was the basis of the 3 visits? And also the second question is, how did you measure the concept of family planning counseling?
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and hi everyone. I'm Kalayu.
Kalayu, may the questions not be clear from our voice. They are also written in the discussion forum, in the chat forum.
Okay, so to go directly to the questions. Thank you very much for the raising.
Kalayu, we think you'll mute. You may want to unmute yourself so that we can follow.
It's not mute. It's not. Hello? Can you hear me?
From our IT desk, is there a way we can reach you?
Hello? Hello?
Oh, there you are.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very well.
Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to respond the questions. Regarding to the selecting the women who have received the 3 maternal and child health services, is because my interest is the family planning counseling. So the counseling was delivered at 3 different services. So those who receive family planning and at antenatal care may not be included under the immunization service, and those who get facility delivery also may not be get child immunization. So in order to include all the women who get we take the intersections of all the 3 services. I understand that why it may have its own limitation. One is to decrease the sample size and other limitations, but it's because of the exposure variable. our exposure variable was family planning counseling, so which is provided at INC, at delivery, as well as at child immunization. So in order to be intersection of this, we included women who receive maternal and child health services. Regarding to the definitions of family planning, yes, I understand is family planning counseling is a very comprehensive issue. It is also difficult to measure, I understand, using one question, but as the data is, was collected using self-administered or self-reported types of question, we have used the self-reported types of response, which means women were asked whether they receive counseling or not during the antenatal, during the delivery and the child immunization. But I understand that, and we also appreciate the limitations of taking self-reported types of questions. These are my responses. Did I respond?
Maybe.
If there is any further questions, it's welcome.
Forum, you may want to elaborate a little bit more on your findings where you found that women who had antenatal counseling on family planning were more likely to have an unmet need for contraception, which raises a concern on whether we should counsel women during the antenatal care or not. If you have a quick answer, you can put it here, or you can put it in the discussion forum.
I think it's a very surprising finding for us as a researcher as well. It's not only for this paper. We have also another paper. Surprisingly, unlike the WHO and the Ministry of Health guidelines, counseling during antenatal care was not associated with increasing contraceptive utilization as well as with reducing the unmet needs. So if you see in the recommendation, we suggest further investigation is needed for the counseling during antenatal care counseling in Ethiopia. I understand that the Minister of Health and as well as the WHO guidelines recommend this integrated family planning counseling during the antenatal care, but our finding is inconsistent with this. It may be due to different reasons. I think regarding to the perceptions of women, it may be related to the healthcare providers counseling quality, or different types of reasons we can suggest, but it is, I think it's better to further investigate why women are not using family planning for those who are receive family planning counseling during the antenatal care, unlike the other delivery points. So I don't have no direct answer for this, because as my objective was not why antenatal care was not associated with this, but I think other researchers, they can go further, and I'm also planning to on these issues, on two main issues. Why is counseling in Ethiopia is very low? Second is why is antenatal care family planning counseling is not associated with increasing the contraceptive uptake as well as reducing the unmet need is a very important point. Thank you.
And there are really many questions, given this is a sensitive topic, and you can keep checking in the discussion forum on our online platform, and you may want also to add some answers to the emerging questions. Ladies and gentlemen, please allow to give a round of applause to our two presenters as they rejoin their places. Thank you.
We have two very exciting presentations following this. that would make us forget that it's lunchtime. So the next presenter will be Balesti Mengiste. Balesti will present on exchange of sexually explicit contents and associated factors among high school students. This is a topic we are all guessing throughout, looking at adolescents. Now we will get the answers today from this presentation. I will come Balesti to the podium.
Amen, guys. Sorry. Here it is a presentation outline consists of introduction. Okay, sorry. My presentation outline consists of introduction, objectives, methods and materials, results and discussions, limitation, conclusion, and recommendations are my presentation outlines. When I come to the introductory part, exchange sexually explicit contents are the act of sending or receiving self-generated contents. They are photos or videos, texts, voice, and pictures via mobile phones or other related electronics media. This population uses newly developed devices, applications, electronics innovations as a means of personal expression and self-discovery, and the adoption of such like exchange of sexual explicit contents behavior, increasing access to digital technologies, influence, use sexual reproductive consequences. And there were more than 7.3 billion mobile subscribers worldwide. Among thus, 3.5 billion people were using internet, and which 2.5 billion from developing country, including our countries, according to World Bank report 2018. And the access of social media such as Facebook, Telegram, Imo, Instagram, and excessive cell phone with text messaging dramatically changes how and when the users or students communicate each other. And users are often considered as the healthiest stage, but faces a crucial, unique, it's also a critical period which faces different kinds of sexually reproductive health problems, and the means prevalence of exchange sexually explicit contents are 14.8 according to the systematic meta-analysis report recently. And this increasing popular behavior poses a number of potential risks and consequences, such as earlier sexual behavior, promiscuity, unwanted pregnancy, STD, including HIV/AIDS, harassment, and cyberbullying, and depression, even suicide are the major consequences of this behavior. The use of electronics media for sharing and exchanging sexual explicit nature is a common, despite this fact, sets a limited evidence of the magnitude of exchange sexual explicit contents in high school students, especially in East Gojam zone, and the negative effect of ICT materials are overweighted than its advantage. As adolescent sexual reproductive services are one of the Sustainable Development Goal agenda, this study could be the way to help out, and young people in Ethiopia consists 1/3 of the total population, and this kind of study is beneficial, and it's an area of research not much researched in our country. This study will serve as an input for school principals and relevant stakeholders to develop some guidelines and regulations. Funding will be used for families and guardians to follow the negative usage of electronic material for addressing the avoidable risks as well. Also, it's helpful to the government to identify the risks and benefits of mobile usage at school level or early age. And for the researcher, the study will aid to discovery the new crucial areas as well. It is a conceptual framework developed from literature reviews. consists of socio-demographic characteristics, behavioral factors, technology related, and religiosity as well. Objectives of the study: general objective to assess the exchange of explicit content and associated factor among high school students in Debre Marcos town. And the specific objectives are to determine the prevalence and to identify factors associated with exchange sexual explicit content among high school students in Debre Marcos town 2022. It is the methods and the materials of this study. This study conducted in Debre Marcos town from April 18 up to May 30, 2022, and the cross-sectional design one. And the source population, all high school students learning in Debre Marcos town in the academic year 2021 up to 2022. And the study populations, all high school students learning in Debre Marcos town in the academic year 2021 up to 2022, who fulfill the inclusion criteria. And the inclusion criteria, all high school students learning in Debre Marcos town during the study period were included. And the exclusion criteria, all high school students were transferred and stayed more or less than 6 months for this study excluded. The sampling determination is using two populations. So that is the first objective and the second objectives. For taking the first objective, 33.7 from the previous study in Northern Tigray, and the final calculated sample size was 590. And here is the tabular presentation of the second objectives, which is the final sample calculated is 377. And the largest one is taking from the first objective, that's 590 is my sample size. It is a sampling procedure. Stratified sampling technique with proportional allocation with each strata or class were used, and the sampling framework, the student's roster or mark list, and the sample size was selected using computer generated random sampling. Here is the graphical presentation of sampling procedure. All high schools are included for this study in the town. Study variables, dependent variables, sexual explicit contents, and independent variables, socio-demographic factors, behavioral factors, technology related, and religiosity were independent variables for this study. Operational definitions: exchange sexual explicit contents. Participants were assessed using the following two parameters with yes or no response rates. The first one, have you received sexual suggestive materials? And the second one, have you ever sent sexual suggestive materials? Those respondents, at least they say yes, they categorize every exchange sexual explicit performed. Operational definitions. Next, sexual explicit content means sexual suggestive materials that are naked photos or semi-naked photos, nude pictures or semi-nude pictures, messages, voice or videos. And religiosity is the condition of religious phase, and using STEM Santa Clara strengths of Likert scales ranging, low phase and high phase. And finally, we divided to above mean and below mean for categorize. Data collection procedure and quality assurance. Data was collected using self-administered questionnaire, and the questionnaire prepared for English first and translated into Amharic, and again to English by another translator to check consistency. And the final version that was edited in Amharic, and the questionnaire was used to collect the data. Training was given for the data collectors and the supervisors, and pretest was conducted. Reliability was done using Chrome Batch Alpha, and finally each data collected by the data collector supervised and checked. Data management and analysis. The data obtained from each respondent was entered to EP data and exported spaces. Adequacy of the final model was checked using Cosmar and Lomshaw goodness of it. Assumption of binary logistic regression was and as such as multicollinearity was checked also. The binary logistic regression model was checked the association between variables and variables with p-value of most less than 0.25 is, and variable logistic regression was entered to multivariable, and finally p-value less than 0.5 was significant for this study. It is ethical consideration graphically, the pathway of ethical consideration. Results and discussions. Social demographic characteristics. About 573 students were participated in this study, which is the response rate is 97.1%, and the mean age of the respondents were 18.7, and about 55% of respondents were male, and most of the respondents were Orthodox Christian, which is 95.3%, and nearly 85% of respondents come from the urban areas. It's religiosity graphically. more than half of the respondents were high religiosity scale. Students in technology, about 560 or 97.7% of students had access to ICT materials, whether at home or school compounds, and the majority of them use mobile phones, and about 43.6% students were watching different TV programs, and 36% of respondents have pre-internet access in their house or school compounds, and 77% of students use social media accounts, and the majority of they had Facebook, and which is about 53.8% of respondents had Facebook account ownership. Is graphically represented social media ownership of the respondents, and it is 53.8% of Facebook ownership. Sexuality and behavioral characteristics, about 19.5% of respondents had boyfriend or girlfriend, that means in a relationship, and 7.2% of respondents were ever have sexual intercourse, and 17.3% of respondents were watching pornography, and nearly 9% of students were consume any type of alcohol, including local beverages. Here it is the magnitude of exchange sexual explicit content. Text messaging was the most practical sexual explicit content, and the video one is the least one. And about 38% of the students were practiced this exchange of sexually explicit content among the 30.9% of the sender, and 28.8% of receiver, and 22.4% are both. And the prevalence of this study is conducted in Arizona. The magnitude of exchange sexual explicit content of this study was higher than the report from Tigray one, and the possible justification might be study population difference and due to the study variation. Also more prevalence than the study in Zimbabwe and Rhodesia land due to the difference in study population and due to time variation exposed to digital technologies. This finding was less magnitude than compared to the study conducted in Western countries such as Spain and Netherlands and neighboring country Kenya. And this could be due to difference availability and accessibility of internet, early adoption of technology, and cultural variation, as well as social norms also, the possible justification. In this study, being male was about 2 times higher to practice exchange of sexual explicit than females. This might be due to social cultural influence or taboo. And even the females engaged, they are less likely report to it's a taboo, which is supported by the study in Botswana and Zimbabwe. The students who were grade 12 were 3 times more likely to exchange sexual explicit content than grade 9. This might be due to different class size and increasing searching exposure of different technologies, and might be because of growing ownership of ICT also. And this was similar to the study conducted in USA. The students those who were living with mother was 7.49 times, and the students they live father only 7 times more likely exchange sexually explicit content than students live both parents. And this might be due to single parental, not much parental guidance and support inadequate, and family environments was poor, and there was a little support to discussing importance such as intimate and dangerous activities and self-management of sexual relationship, which is agreed the study in Spain. The also of exchange sexual explicit content among students who had social media accounts were 3.3 times higher to compare with students who had no social media accounts. And this result was agreed to the finding of the study conducted in Ecuador. And this might be due to ownership of social media accounts prone to expose some sexual contents easily, and the search social media sites were full of variety of frequentants, including illicit videos as well. And the also of exchange sexual explicit content among students who had Wi-Fi access were 2.29 times more likely engaged in practice. Those are not Wi-Fi internet, or the result was supported by the study conducted in Netherlands, and the possible justification might be due to accessing fast and free internet leads to extreme exposure to sexual explicit contents. The likelihood of exchange sexual explicit content among students who had religiosity scale had 1.6 times more likely to practice those who had high religiosity scale. Similarly, the study supports the study conducted in New York, and this might be due to religiosity was sexual lowers sexual permissive attitudes and religious customs are one of the mechanisms of control of this behavior. And since when it comes to the limitation part, this study examines personally sensitive issue. It may have difficult to get honest answer. And the direction of casual relationship cannot determine since the study was based on cross-sectional one. And that's the conclusion part. Exchange of sexual explicit content among high school students in Debre Marcos was found high, which compared to the systematic review and meta-analysis. And sixth grade family structure, use of social media, pre-internet access, low GST were found high significant or effect of exchange sexual explicit content among high school students. And the most commonly exchanged explicit content was text message, while the video one is the list. A recommendation, guardians should be strengthen their children's religious connections and practice good follow-up, as well as should have parenting their children together instead of individually. And pre-internet or Wi-Fi should be restricted or limited in school compounds beyond the academic purpose. And strategies should be designed to control the use of technologies to restrict creating social media at this school age or early age, and limit viewing of illicit contents from the social sites, set laws for the smartphone application in terrible programs. And while this study was one of the cross-sectional one in design, which research consider a qualitative one. Thank you.
Thank you, Balesti, for presenting one of the challenges of technology. By the way, Balesti is a nurse with MPH in reproductive health, and he's currently working in Lumami Primary Hospital as SRH service provider. Our next presenter will be Briye Dasale Makonnen, who had a master's in public health and reproductive health from University of Gondar, with more than 5 years of work experience in clinical area and around 7 years of teaching experience. He had a lot of research experience, both on primary data and secondary data analysis, including utilization of DHS data, doing systemic reviews, meta-analysis. He has more than 21 peer-reviewed research publications, mostly on sexual and reproductive health of women and maternal health. Today, he will present one of his meta-analysis work on child sexual abuse and its determinants among children in Ethiopia. I welcome Briye to the podium.
Okay, thank you very much for the kind introduction. Our research is entitled Child Sexual Abuse and its Determinants Among Children in Ethiopia, Systematic Review and Meta-Analysis. Here are the presentation outlines as usual. Child sexual abuse is a form of child sexual abuse in which mostly adults or other children could be use children for sexual activity or for sexual orientation. We say that children are those individuals whose age is less than 18 years in most of the declarations. So those children are not comprehend that they cannot give consents, and they may not distinguish things whether they are harmful or not. So the use of or the involvement of children in sexual activities, in sexual orientation by different means is sexual abuse in general. So adults can use children for sexual abuse by using different incentives or pressurizing or by letting them to see a different pornographies, so that children can be simply involved in sexual activities that can be also sexual abuse. So children are child sexual abuse do have its own determinantal effects, or it's a serious public health problem, and it's also a great violation of human rights that can result in a number of medical or psychological and different mental health problems. Though sexual abuse affects people of all ages or all different sexes, but mostly women, children, and adolescents are mostly affected. Globally, there are a number of children that are suffering from sexual abuse. There are also suffering from different physical and emotional abuse. So mostly they're affected by adults. So the global prevalence of child sexual abuse, which has been estimated at around 20% for females and around 8% for males. Child sexual abuse is a persistent forms of child abuse that often not reported, that's concealed. Mostly children who are suffering from sexual abuse may not be reported for individuals or for the concerned individuals. There are a number of reasons mentioned in different literatures why individuals or children could not report their suffering. Among the common reasons why children and other adult individuals even didn't report as they are victims, definitions in difference, variation in definitions of sexual abuse. Some of the individuals may perceive that's not a violence, that may not be abuse, and some of the individuals may perceive as a violence. Anyhow, fear of social stigma. Survivors may not be exposed themselves as they are victims, and cultural and social norms. In most of the literature indicators, the culture concealed individuals or individuals to expose themselves for the other individuals, which can it inhibits them to help, seeking help. Child sexual abuse has long-lasting effects. It do have both mental, behavioral, and sexual and reproductive health problems. Among the common consequences that has been reported so far, behavioral problems including feeling lonely, aggressiveness are mostly reported among those children who are suffered from sexual abuse. And the other mental health problem, including self-harm, substance abuse, depression, anxiety, post-traumatic syndrome, are mostly mentioned in literatures among those children who are survived from sexual violence. Physical health problems, including sexually transmitted infections and unwanted, unintended pregnancy, which is mostly ends up with unsafe abortion that exposes individuals for the complication of unsafe abortion, including morbidity and mortality. Those are the common complications that are identified. And there are also a number of determinants that possibly determine sexual abuse among children. Weak rule of law, poor governance, social, cultural, and gender norms, low income, unemployment, and limited educational opportunities, and other gender inequality issues are mostly mentioned determinants for child sexual abuse in different parts of the globe. Social isolation, parental conflicts, or lack of parental control, or living with a single parent, or lack of parental control in general are also the common determinants that are mostly mentioned in literatures. So in Ethiopia, there are a number of fragmented individual studies, but this studies didn't systematically reviewed, or the pooled prevalence is not determined. So this systematic review was conducted to determine the pooled prevalence of child sexual abuse in Ethiopia, and to determine the determinants of, to identify the determinants of child sexual abuse. So to determine our objective, we have used a number of methods. The first thing that we did is we sent the protocol to be registered in Prospero, which can be available with this ID number. And eligibility criteria were identified. So observational studies reported the prevalence and the determinants of sexual abuse, whether they are published or grade literatures were included in this study. The information source and search strategy. The first thing that we have made is we developed image terms and K terms. After developing K searching terms, we used PubMed, Scopus, Web of Science, and other electronic databases in order to determine relevant or potential literatures. So the searching has been conducted up to 28 August 2022. So reviewers were actively participated in the quality assessment and the data extraction, just essential or pertinent information or relevant information from the primary studies has been extracted by using Excel sheets. And the JOANA brings Institute critical appraisal for cross-sectional studies has been used for assessing quality of each studies. The outcome variable of this systematic review was child sexual abuse, just considering that a primary studies reporting as sexual abuse among children. When it comes to the data processing and analysis, we used Stata 14 for meta-analysis. The heterogeneity among the included studies were evaluated by using Cochrane Q statistics and quantified by I-square, and publication bias was also evaluated by using symmetrical inspection of funnel plots and by Eggers statistical test, which were showed there were no publication bias. Sensitivity analysis was conducted to determine whether there is a variation due to different factors or by using different models. Here is the funnel plot. And when it comes to the result and the discussion, just at first, studies were searched from different electronic database, and they were imported into EndNote. Then duplication were removed at first. After removing the duplication, just articles were reviewed by their titles, abstracts. After reviewing them by their abstracts and titles, those articles who are eligible for full texts were extracted and reviewed for full texts. Finally, 8 studies were included in this systematic review and meta-analysis. Among those studies, just 5 were quantitative cross-sectional studies, 3 were mixed. They used both qualitative and quantitative studies. So a total of 5,979 study participants were included in 8 states. So the pooled prevalence of child sexual abuse in this selected studies were 41%, which indicates that there's a high prevalence of sexual abuse is existing in Ethiopia. So the results were in line in other studies, other systematic review, which is conducted in multi-country systematic review, which shows 32% of children are suffering or experiencing from sexual abuse. This indicates considerable children are suffering from sexual abuse by different perpetrators or by different individuals. So this indicates child sexual abuse needs a priority or intervention that try to reduce sexual abuse among children should be prioritized. The other thing that we have identified from the primary studies are perpetrators of child sexual abuse. Just the main perpetrators of sexual abuse against children were family members, right? School teachers, boyfriends, neighbors, peers, employers are mostly mentioned perpetrators of sexual abuse among children in the primary stages. So it's very typical. Children are exposing themselves, or children are experiencing violence by their parents. So it needs some intervention. And the review also indicated or shows where the victims or where the sexual abuse is mostly occurring. A variety of places has been identified. The commonest place of sexual abuse where it takes place in victims or the perpetrator's house. So children may be pressurized or to come or to go there from the perpetrator's house, or family members or other individuals may victimize them from their houses. And the other common places where schools, neighbor house, hotel, and other public street, even at the place which were also identified. The determinants of child sexual abuse, children just, we didn't pull the odds of ratio due to different inconsistencies, but we try to review what are the common determinants that are identified in the primary studies. So a systematic review was conducted on the determinants of child sexual abuse. Children over the age of 14, female sex, lack of parental control, and children who live with single parent were more likely to be experienced or to be violated by perpetrators for sexual abuse. This is supported by other evidences. The reason could be sexual orientation. Those female students may be attractive for perpetrators. Those children whose ages greater than 40 may be matured and they may attract the perpetrators. So the possible reason could be, or effect of parental support. There are a number of literature stated that those children who do have parental support living with both parents are more likely, less likely to be violated. So those children who are living with a single parent may be could have the chance to be victimized. And the other possible, the other determinant was children who had a mental illness and physical disability were more likely to be sexually abused, which is supported by other evidence as indicated is. The possible reason might be those children who are mentally ill or physically, those living with physical disability may not be protected themselves, so that they are vulnerable for all physical, sexual, and emotional abuse. Children who use chats, or generally children who are using substances, chats, alcohol, and cigarettes are more likely to be experience sexual violence. That could be the effect of substances. As we know, the substances or alcohols may diminish the ability of thinking. Children may not identify, or they may not be perceive whether they are at risk or not while they are taking such a kind of substances, so that they can also simply experience sexual abuse. And the other thing is, children who lack open discussion with their parents about sexual and reproductive health issues are more likely to be abused or to experience sexual violence. This is the common issue in Ethiopia. Just in Ethiopia, discussing or communicating with their children about sexual issue is mostly considered as a taboo or a sensitive issue. But I do have a number of researches or literature indicates that those children who have open communication with their parents about sexual and reproductive issue can save themselves from different reproductive health problems. They can use contraceptive methods. They can protect themselves from sexual transmitted infections, and they can also use sexual basic reproductive health services. Like that, those children who do not have open discussion with their parents are more likely to be violated, to experience sexual violence. This could be less parental involvement. They may not have attachment, or children may not tell their experience or their daily exposure for their parents. They could not get any support from their parents. Or the other thing, missing opportunities. Parents can teach or can share their experience or basic things for their children. So this can be the possible reasons for this finding. The other thing that we have reviewed was what are the common consequences that has been mentioned in the primary studies. So this indicates feeling lonely, attempt to commit suicide, fear of males for those female victims, and verbal and physical aggressiveness are mostly mentioned consequences after having child sexual abuse. And similarly, victims of child sexual abuse experienced sexual and reproductive health problems. Some of the primary studies indicated that some of the participants were experiencing unwanted pregnancies, so that they may undergo abortion or hindering urination and vaginal discharge are the commonly mentioned consequences in the primary states. So that are the limitations, or this ratio didn't determine as I have said. And okay, the conclusion, just the prevalence of sexual violence among children is very high, as we concluded, and there are different multiple determinants. Therefore, just concerning individuals or stakeholders, better to empower the community in their struggle in the prevention of child sexual abuse and creating awareness, as sexual abuse among children is a very critical issue. And the other things, both punishment, sex perpetrators are also we recommend. Moreover, support, special support for those children who are living with disability should be given. Thank you very much.
Because of time, we will take 2 critical questions. Dr. Beitan?
People may have different explanation for the things that they are already done, but we don't have to echo their sayings. First, I would like to thank for the excellent presentation, but being attracted by my little girl is not acceptable for any mother, for any society. Those people's majority of the assailants are males. They have to control their testosterone encephalopathy, and we don't have to echo these terminologies, being attracted. So this is just my comment, and we don't have to use it in this public institutions, or because I just hear it every day on the radio. So this should be the time that we should control our wordings. We could not accept such wording, so that because somebody is attractive can assault anyone is not completely acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That should resonate with all of us. The way we turn, the way we describe and narrate sexual violence is very important. I'm sure that Brie didn't put it in that term, but we have to be consciously aware of, these terms are really harmful. Because someone is attracted, it doesn't give, a green light to be harassed or violated or things like that. Any other one critical comment or question? Yes, please, at the back.
Okay, thank you. I have one question on first presenter. Thank you for your nice work. My question was, since the topic was very sensitive, what data quality control measures were done, especially in data collection procedure? Thank you.
Okay, Belstein, you may respond. Can you repeat the question, please?
Okay, since the topic is very sensitive, what data quality control measures were done, especially during data collection procedure?
Okay. Actually, I didn't any measure to secure their secret during the data collection. The data collection method is simply self-administered questionnaire, and I recommend during my presentation, since the issue is sensitive, and I don't. ዳታ ኮሌክሽን በዳታ የተሰራ ክሮስ ሴክሽናል ዳታ ነው የተጠቀምኩት። ደግሞ ያው ሰልፍ አድሚኒስትሬቲቭ ኩዌሽነር ነው። ሰልፍ አድሚኒስትሬቲቭ ኩዌሽነር እንደመሆኑ የተነሳ በየክላሱ ኩዌሽነሩ ሲበተን ተሰብስቦ ሪፕሬዘንታቲቭ ኩዌሽነሩ ሲሞላ የወሰድኩት ሜጀር የለም። ግን ሴንሲቲቭ እንደመሆኑ መጠን መጨረሻ ላይ ሪኮመንድ አድርጌያለሁ። ይሄ በኳሊቴቲቭ እንዲሰራ ቢያንስ ኳሊቴቲቭ የሚያሟላውን እንዲሰራ ብዬ ሪኮመንድ አድርጌያለሁ። እንደ ጋፕ ይዤዋለሁኝ። እንደገና ሊሚቴሽን ላይም አስቀምጬዋለሁ።
Okay, thank you very much. We will wrap up the presentation. I will just give some highlights to emphasize the importance of the two presentations. In the first presentation, we have seen the challenge of technology. As much as we love technology, it comes with its own challenge. So we need to think ahead, how to protect the young people and so on. And sharing sexual explicit message, pictures, videos is beyond physical health. It affects their mental and social well-being. So somebody, both researchers, service providers, and policymakers has to actively work to avert the negative impact of this issue. When it comes to child sexual abuse, it is, something that's not well reported. What we hear in the researches is usually the tip of the iceberg. The Amharic saying, "Talat ከሩቅ አይመጣም," really works when it comes to sexual violence, not only among children, among adults. Majority of sexual violence are committed by someone very close to the victim, in the setup where the victim usually is familiar, usually the home. So this is, I think, the very key message from the two presentations. I would like to thank the two presenters for their nice, informative presentation. Thank you, everyone, for your attendance.
Thank you very much, the moderators, Dr. Polyfield and Dr. Unat.